Feel optimal.
Welcome back to another episode of the Autonomy Pods. We're here with Hym, resident autonomy coach and also just general nice dude. But today we're going to speak about his journey and everything that comes with just being a very jacked guy. So, hey, Hym, how's it going?
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Feel very humbled. Nice guy. I don't know.
Nice guy with a jacked
We'll see. Let people decide afterwards.
But yeah, how's training at the moment?
Training is actually going surprisingly well. Obviously, I'm on week 25 now, I think, of my diet, or 24. I can't remember. You lose track when it's going so long. But yeah, I would fully expect at this kind of body weight that I'm currently at, that, I would feel a lot worse. I would be a lot more hungry, and training would actually be not as good as it's been in my previous preps. So this one's been very nice to me so far, and I'm just riding that wave for now.
What do you think the biggest difference is? Is it the length? I know that this prep is the longest you've done, right?
I mean, yeah, it'll probably be time. This is not the longest, but it's definitely it will be the longest. It's not been the longest so far, but in 2019 I did like a crash diet, I would call it. I started off a lot heavier than I did this season. I wasn't as lean, I was fatter, I didn't have as much muscle. And then I prepped for a show which took 16 weeks, which was very, very intrusive, very aggressive. I was not eating loads, doing a lot of steps, doing a lot of cardio. I think I was doing up to about 2 hours of cardio a day, for like at least like 12 weeks, I would say, every day. No refeeds. So it was pretty brutal. And then by that first show, I had no kind of plans to do any later shows. That was like my all in, and would have probably been fine if I had stopped there. But then obviously you qualify and you're like, oh, I'm actually quite good at this. Let me the finals in October, and now I had to hold this borderline eating disorder for another 6 months. Beautiful sport, bodybuilding, competitive starvation.
Competitive starvation and eating disorder, then supersetted with eating disorder.
Yeah, and doing a hell of a lot of cardio.
You might as well just save the time and bought a stepper.
I had a bike actually, and at that time I think I was probably like 4 weeks out, and then I started a new job in the city. So we went from like not moving much to quite a highly stressful like one-to-one PT job again, and I think that just threw me over the edge afterwards, and I struggled to find that balance and I guess get into the routine of things again. But yeah, that was a very hard season, but I learned a lot from that process, and probably, I mean, competitively, I would like to have done it differently, but experience-wise, learning experience from the failures, I think, yeah, I wouldn't have had it any other way, because it definitely crosses over to, um, understanding how it really feels to be, experience bad practice, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I always maintain that I am I got the most amount of experience and how I've been the coach I am today by how shit I was as a client, maybe for the last, I don't know, maybe my mid-20s, definitely absolute terrible. And all of those learnings has allowed me to be a pretty good coach now, because you see it in other people and you're like, not today.
Yeah. And you see the signs earlier, right? So you're like, oh, that's exactly how I kind of felt. But then also, I think not being completely biased to your own feelings, because sometimes you can feel a certain way when you did it, but the other person might be totally fine with it. And just, I guess, making sure that you communicate that across and say, look, this is how I felt. Like, please just speak to me. And that communication side of things, if they can handle it, man, that props to them. But if in that same situation, I can do it, and I think it's important to just to have that clarity and speak to the individual who you're working with, rather than your own emotional biases and your own experiences.
Yeah, we actually spoke about this yesterday, didn't we? We spoke about the art of like some people are not in the position, and that's totally okay. Or they're not at that moment in time, particularly coachable, and that comes down to a lot of different factors, but majority down to being vulnerable and understanding yourself a little bit more. A lot of people have the one or two ways of doing things. It's either a knee jerk, over top compensation. So like, I fuck you, or I am going to do what you say, but I'm going to do better than what you say. So therefore, I'm going to prove you wrong. Or you get the people that just are project avoid, and those people will be the ones that either do a coaching process, and when they say, oh, or you hold them accountable potentially, if you want to say that, or tell them why they didn't do a good job in that specific week, they run away a million miles, or they just don't respond to you on a week-to-week basis. And unfortunately, that type of non-coachability is really difficult. And I've been there on both sides, and it's all about where you are as a mental entity at that time as well, right?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of, obviously as a coach, for us to, the way, as we always say, the way that you say something, right? Not what it is that you're saying. So being, speaking well and delivering it across well, but then also in terms of the client perspective, it's got to be, you are open to taking on that criticism, taking on that challenge, to improve. And then sometimes, we all have an ego, right? And it's just about, maybe the first time you listen to it, you get pissed off, or you're like, oh shit, kind of thing. But then, you have to maybe listen to it a few more times, take a step back, relax, chill, and then re-listen to it and see, okay, is some of what he's saying true, or if all of it is true, kind of thing, and then going off that, right? But a lot of it is the initial kickback is like, oh, he's saying that I'm bad, he's making me feel bad, and it's like a big hit on your ego, I think, which is ultimately the biggest challenge, right? Because
Yeah.
you feel like, you're you're down, right? Like you feel, damn, this is taking a hit on me, I feel up, and then it
Yeah.
really brings you down to earth, kind of
Yeah.
thing,
It's that
which is hard for a lot of people.
yeah, it's the challenge to the core belief that people hold will then create that feeling of like someone's just for us it'll be someone's just kicked you in the dick under the table. That's what it feels like. It's
Yeah.
like, why did you do that? And it's like, well, no, I tried to help you, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like that. But yeah, that's what it feels like. It's a shot to the thing that you believe the most in life. As we've spoken about before, I'm slowly realizing what mine is, and understanding it a bit more, so that I can see my life when actually it's challenged, and those shots to the dick that I feel end up giving me some type of responses, like I go and work harder, or I go and move away from certain scenarios, or I don't talk to certain people because I'm going to maybe get that back,
Mm,
and I don't want to get that. But in the coaching process, people don't really know that that's what's about to happen, so they do feel like it's one of those shots under the table with like, why did you just cheap shot me?
mm.
But isn't a cheap shot. It's actually just it's a behavioral reflection, unfortunately.
I think, yeah, once you nail that as well, and you understand what it is that you're holding on to, that ego is, you break that down, and that changes everything that you do. Like, it's not just, the training side of things, being a better coach, just being a better person in general, on how you react to, certain situations. um I definitely had that before as well. When I was, I would say, when I was in Singapore, I was definitely more highly strung, you could call it, and had a much bigger ego. And then you start to learn a little bit more about yourself, and you're like, actually, I'm very closed-minded. And until you open your mind up to, taking on criticism, taking on the challenges, um, that's a whole different ball game, man. You develop as an individual. Maybe that's just called maturity in terms of age, but yeah, that after, like, becoming a bit more open-minded. And we all still have egos. I'm not saying that I don't, but it's definitely a lot less than it was before. And you can call yourself out on it as well. You're like, okay, I responded in that way, I got triggered. Why did I get triggered? Because if you do get triggered, there's something there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we always say, like, if you get triggered, good.
Yeah.
Because there's something there to work on, right?
If you didn't care, or it wasn't something that was genuinely important to you, probably subconsciously, you wouldn't pass it as something important, right? I was reading a book this week, and thank God I finished it because it was fucking deep. But it's called Power versus Force, and it says that everything that we have in our brains and what we see are all holographic, right? So we see representations of ourselves in other people and see it how
Yes.
the way we see it the way we want to see it. So
Yes.
like other people may see the holograph from a different angle and see a different thing. We may see this thing, but generally, for the most part, the information that you receive, you will perceive it in a way that is related to you, not probably the way that it was intended to be for the most part. And actually, that emotional maturity, I think that's where you probably increased in that emotional intelligence and information came through probably not seeing it in the same light that you did, because you were like, well, why am I reacting like that? Or why is that happening to me all of the time? And then you take a classic different perspective on things. And that's the different way of looking at a different hologram, is that you see what what you used to think was a thing that was, it's attacking me, is actually now changed perspective to that person's trying to help me. What do I need to change? Or if I need to change, is that something that I care about enough to make changes with? But the first time you look at that holograph, it's straight back at you going, I fucked up, or
Yeah.
you're not but nothing but shit,
It's like a personal attack, right?
Yeah. That's the first time that happens anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to bring us back to, if people know of you from years gone by, like they'll know of you as someone that's just a very, very strong dude who loves bodybuilding. But like, where did that strength start? Like, where, like, apart from like just lifting a barbell, but like, where did that come
That's my mic, by the way. That's not actually me gassing up on the
from?
on the
You
podcast.
farting in your mic. It's a really sensitive mic.
Yeah. So, what was the question? So, where did I start from?
Yeah, where did the strength come from? Not your farts.
Well, it comes from the poop power.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I first kind of started training. Let's take it way back, right? So I first started training out of, I guess, when I was doing my A levels. It was when you started buying clothes, right? And it was like the time of JD Sports was big, and it was like 3 for £10 for these t-shirts,
There's
right? Night
Mackenzie,
t-shirts.
the Mackenzie ones. Yeah.
Some Mackenzie, yes. And I would buy small, right? Because that's like almost, for me, it was like almost the first time that I even cared about what clothes I wore, other than school uniform, right? So I was wearing it and I was like, oh my God, is this how I look in this top? Like, I'm wearing a small and it now looks like, the Fear of God oversized kind of t-shirts, which are popular now. But I was like, oh man, I can't go out like this kind of thing. So that's kind of what triggered me to start training. And I think subconsciously I didn't realize that how low in confidence I was from that. And I just carried on training throughout. And obviously the first gym that I went to was a hardcore gym, which is now closed down, unfortunately. And that really just triggered my love for it. I don't know why I would go in there and do the things that I did. Obviously, I had a big goal, but I would push myself to the absolute limit. Um, I wouldn't train legs because I played football, obviously. I was one of those guys. And yeah, I don't know what it was that triggered me, but I just consistently turned up. I just had this in my mind that, you know, Ronnie Coleman or all those guys that you see in the pictures, I would get there as long as I just turned up. I kept going. I don't know what it was that made me think that. But it definitely worked for me. And when I was in the gym, there was always a target. I never really focused on the look per se. I was like, okay, there was two sets of dumbbells. There was one set which was like the red iron ones, and they only went up to 55 pounds. And then there was the big black dumbbells that were heavier, and no one in the gym really used them except for the biggest guys. And I was like, okay, I need to get to that, right? Or for bench press, it was I need to put one of those big 20s on. Nowadays, you got the bumper plates, right? So people are just like whacking on loads of 10s.
Ain't nothing sweeter than a pair of 20s clanging together.
Yeah. Well, I only had one, but for me, well, for me, I was like, I got to get to this big 20. That's the big milestone. And then after I hit that, it was like, okay, now it's getting the two wheels on, right? Or getting to that next set of dumbbells. That was always my goals, and obviously they were big goals for at the time, because I was only benching like 40 kilos, and the big ones are like, it works out to be 60, right? So for me, it took a long time to kind of get there. And then obviously throughout that process, then you just learn to love the gym, and you're like, okay, how do I improve? How do I get there? And then that obviously brought me that love, and I was like, okay, well, I know that I enjoy this kind of stuff. And I enjoy PE at school. So I went and did my sports science degree at university. And during that time, we had like a work placement kind of module. So I was like, fuck, I don't know what I want to do here. And I one of the guys in the gym, he recommended to go down to Genesis, which I still kind of train there to this day. And that's like a proper hardcore bodybuilding gym, powerlifting gym. And that's kind of where I met Phil Lerney as well. So he was doing powerlifting at the time. Now he's quite big in the industry, doing business courses or whatever. And he was speaking to people in the gym, and I was like, okay, I want some of that. That is definitely what I want to do later in life. And that was the time when he was working at Third Space, so he was still doing the gym floor PT stuff, and it definitely motivated me a lot to go into the fitness industry. And at that time, they were all powerlifting. I was like, what is this powerlifting kind of thing? Like, how do you get involved? And the owner of the gym, Dave Beatty, he's a powerlifter himself. He organizes a lot of the British powerlifting events. And I just said, how do I get involved with this? Like, what do you guys do, kind of thing? And they were training every week. And he just said, okay, what's your lift? And I said to him, I have no idea, you know. And he trialed me out, and he said, okay, well, we're doing openers next week. Why don't you come along and try this? And he just put weight on the bar, and he's just like, okay, squat this. Squatted it. It was like 60, 100, 140. And then he was like, okay, this guy, he can squat. And he's like, okay, chuck these knee wraps on, 180, 180, chuck this belt on, 190 kilos. And he's like, okay, you're good. Let's see what you can bench. Let's see what you can deadlift. And then throughout that week, there was because they had a whole team of powerlifters. There's one guy that was a similar weight class to me, and he was like, okay, whatever he's deadlifting, you just do it. And then I just did everything that he did, right? And he was like, oh shit, okay, you're in. Okay, so next week is a rest week, and then the week after, that's the British. So then I went into the British, and my first competition, I deadlifted the British record, which hadn't been broken for like probably a very long time, and I pulled 231 kilos.
At
Yeah.
what body weight?
I was 69 kilos, so I didn't make weight because I obviously didn't know how to diet. I was supposed to get down to 67. I was like, yeah, I can do this, and obviously I had no idea what I was doing at the time, and I did not make weight whatsoever.
Sound good. So let me get this right. So like you just there banging the 60s on the bench press, and then you go, hey mate, I'd like to see what this powerlifting thing's about. And then the guy goes, okay, pick that up off the floor. And then you do that, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. Like, At what point do you do that? At what point is it not like, well, I was taking a bit easy with the 60 kilos?
No,
Or
I mean, obviously it took time. Like I was training in between that point that I was started to Genesis. That was probably I think it was 17 at the time, so I was 19 when I competed. So about 2 years, maybe a year and a
okay,
half of actually, kind of I guess training strangely, the usual 3 sets of 10 kind of thing on everything that you can think of. Um,
so at least there's a time difference. Like
yeah,
that there sounds like, wait a minute. So like one day he was like benching the 60 kilos, and then he went up to some big guy and was like, well, think about doing this full time. Next minute he's gone from a 60 kilo squat to 140 in 1 week. No,
yeah,
but that is isn't that a beautiful thing? That it's a beautiful thing what you can do in a year and a half when you apply some level of consistency.
yeah. I think it's just also falling into something that you never knew that you could do as well. That was always because if I hadn't have been in that situation or like just by chance, like I would have never known that I was so strong, just naturally, right? And yeah, it's bizarre, right? You just kind of fall into certain places. I think a lot of my life has been a bit like that, just falling into the right places at the right time. And I'm sure most people can attest to that as well. Um, Whether it's like something that you made a conscious decision to put you in that place, but then who you communicate with, who you connect with, um, yeah, the world is funny like that, and you just fall into things, I guess.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
can. That's probably the story of my life too. Like even through failures has led me to a position of, oh, this is even way better than it was before. Or
yeah,
hang on, this is actually something that's great.
yeah.
This is like books, isn't it? It's like people say that you find books find you, you don't find books, or either way around, where
Right.
they're
Okay.
there for you at that moment in time. Like you don't just go and randomly go down a bookstore. You don't go to Borders and then just think, oh, I'm going to get these 6 books. I'm going to read them. You can do that, but majority of the time, when someone goes, oh, you should read this, you normally read it and then you're like, oh shit, I got so much value out of that right now. Or and that's why I say, like, when people say, I'm going to read 20, 30 books, or I want to upskill loads in my book, it's like, be patient with those books because, or be patient with the education because the education will come to you in some way, shape,
Mhm.
or form. Like the world or the universe has its beautiful ways of like putting you in scenarios. Like when I learned RTS, I learned biomechanics. If I would have learned that 2 years before, melted, would have completely melted. I didn't know my arse from
Triggered, right?
literally. I'd have been like, but I don't know what a bicep is, or like, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
knew my anatomy inside and out when I was at university, but before that, I didn't know anything. And then after that, you layer it, you layer it, you layer it. And I think that's if you're open to that, and I think that's what the type of person you are and I am. We're open to like change being okay or like just
mm,
falling into things. You get accustomed to just like going with the wind, and that always leads you in a good place because you're going to somewhere that is unknown, but equally you like it, and that's okay.
yeah. I definitely think during that process was when I was kind of discovering like I'm actually very, very close-minded, until I did RTS, until I met Michael, until I met, Coach Chasm. It was definitely prior to that, I was very close-minded. And then I did those courses to almost become more open, right? And to say, okay, there must be some other parts to this. And from then, it's just been, I'm a sponge, I'll
Yeah,
take on anything. I'm open to a lot of things, and
yeah,
just trying it and then creating your own decision from that, right?
yeah.
But until you try both sides of the story, it's hard for you to say, if one fits or the other.
Yeah, I was reading a book actually, another book yesterday. Charlemagne the God. I don't know if you know the guy. He's a radio presenter in America. Very very like outspoken dude. Like gets himself in trouble all the time because he says crazy shit about Kanye West and stuff into his face. He's like causing Kanye Kardashian, which is hilarious. Um, but he was saying in his book that when he was younger, one of the best things that got him through childhood, he was a clever dude, but didn't want to be the clever dude. He wanted to be the thug instead. Like he wanted, it was cool to be the Tupac, the
Thug life.
yeah, thug life. It was cool to be the thug life from where he was in South Carolina. But his
Yeah.
mum, when he was younger, gave him books that were completely opposite ends of what you could be thinking about to give him perspective. And that almost allowed him to see other people's opinions, what world was like, what the viewpoints were like, what the opinions were of, he was a black dude from South Carolina, from the slave trade era of where like his grandparents came over from wherever, proper deep south type of mentality. And she was giving him books of like white Jewish women, or like random like people that were like business people or whatnot, that are nothing to do with this like thug life or the life that they were living at that moment in time. And almost that type of mentality festers over into so much that we do day to day, that if you can go and seek out perspective, or seek out opinions that are completely direct polar opposite to you, you become this, or you don't have that holographic thought process where you're reflecting back your own perception. It's, you understand other people's, and therefore your view, your take, your understanding is more broader and wider.
Yeah, that's why I really like following Dr. Mike, um, Mike Banner, because he's so he's very Gen Pop, right? And he's very honest and like outspoken about how he feels. And but a lot of the things that he's feeling is obviously probably as close to our clients as Gen Pop as you can probably get, right? And it's interesting to take that perspective from him, and because obviously he expresses it so well, and you're like, okay, so people actually kind of, I guess, think like that, whereas we may not think like that, right? So it's good to see that perspective and say, okay, actually, there's another side to this story. Maybe these are things that we consider. So yeah, I like his posts, man. They're very good, as
Yeah.
well as the food reviews.
Yeah, food reviews are fantastic. The chocolate bar stuff.
Yeah.
But I think as well as that, I wrote something yesterday when I was thinking about what it would be like, and this moves on to like our autonomy MVP model that we're working with now, or MVC, or whatever we call it, is that um, I think the cheat code for you to understand nutrition, like let's go with training first because we're talking about training now. If you want to understand training to the highest degree of what you could possibly do, you've got to look at this circular motion of 4 different pillars. Like, so this is ultimate perspective. On the right hand side, you've got RTS. On the top, you've got dog crap training. On the bottom, you've got Mike Israel and like mountain dog training. And then the other end of that, you've got some like functional movement / biofeedback type of training from a nervous system perspective. Like
Mhm.
the stuff where you would on that side of things, it's like CrossFit or anything that's skill related. If you can understand all 4 pillars of those and understand the merits of each individual one, but also you'll sit slap bang in the fucking middle, that's perspective on training. You'll know that, you know as well as I do, and I like this terminology, is that when people used to say, I don't know if you ever listened to Geared Up with Andy McVeigh, is that, I think his name is Andy McVeigh, but I'm definitely his second name is Andy McVeigh. Sorry. But like he says, do dog crap training until your joints are like dust, and then move to mountain dog training. And it's like that perspective, right? Where you're like, do something for a period of time, but you need to know this perspective of like, then when you flip, or how you flip, or what the merits are. And that's what at the moment in time, you've got that perspective. At the moment, it's only 2 ways, which is all out intensity or volume. That's what people are going through, right? But
It's
there
that
is,
Bruce Lee thing, isn't it? Where you take in all the stuff that is valuable to you, and you discard the stuff that isn't, right, or doesn't suit you at that moment in time.
yeah, and you have to go and do that for yourself. That's the self discovery. Whereas if you are like most people on the Instagram era, they'll go and follow a few set people, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's his theory or their theories," and it's like, no, 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 no. They got their opinion from somewhere. They've got their research from somewhere. They've got their understanding from somewhere, and you almost have to understand what the word their understanding is to understand them, to understand the message that they're giving. It's like you people are too easy now to trust other people's opinions as opposed to see where their opinion came from. Because
Mm.
if you talk to me, and where my perspective has come from, let's say it was coaching Gen Pop, you'll know my perspective has come from rehabilitation, first of all. Second of all, strengthening and conditioning. Third of all, from hardcore 12-week transformations. And now we've landed in the middle, potentially, or maybe even on the other end of the spectrum, which is long-term weight management solutions with the viewpoint of getting results in the short term. So if you were to see autonomy, or you were to see what we stood for, you'd be like, oh, autonomy stands for this, boom, 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 boom. But actually, we don't. We just stand for all of the stuff that I've learned over the last 10 years, which you don't see when you're making an opinion of whether that person's right or wrong.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we're all at now. Is we spent years doing this, and then going into the next method, into the next, and now it's just about, we're at that point of making our own decisions and creating our own kind of thing that encompasses everything that we've learned that we didn't like or we did like, and put it together to create almost our own kind of way of doing things, right? And everyone needs to do that. Everyone needs to find their own thing. So they may learn stuff from us, and then they learn stuff that they previously did, and then they create their own kind of values, right, and beliefs and their own systems. Yeah, and that depends on kind of where the client wants to go, right? Because everyone's business is different. It's not. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, the fitness industry is saturated. Yeah, I mean, it's only saturated if you guys are doing exactly the same thing. There's always going to be something slightly different between, one coach to another. You'll like certain things, you like certain people more than one other. And if you're trying to copy a model from somewhere else, which is very common in the last few years of the industry, last 5, I would say, people just regurgitating the same thing, copying, but they're not putting their own, spin on it. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that uniqueness, the small spin that's different.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. The whole quote. Have you ever heard that one with about the guy who comes to fix the boat, and they go, looking around the boat. He's like, spends about 15 minutes examining the boat, tapping on various different bits, and then he just makes one subtle adjustment. He taps really, really hard on one specific on the boat, and the boat is now fixed. And he goes, that'll be £500,000, please. And the guy goes, but you only did one tap. Why am I paying £500,000 for one tap? It goes, you're not paying for the one tap. You're paying for the 10 years of experience of knowing where to tap.
Oh shit. Owned.
Yeah, there you go. It's like now pay me my money. Pay me my money.
Pay me.
You do nothing. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of that self-discovery over the 10 years. Anyway, bringing it back to that discovery phase. So we've attested that you did about a year and a half of lifting, and you now became this person that could just pull quite heavy off the floor. What happened next?
I got a job, and I had to live life. So I knew that side of things was where I wanted to be. Like, I wanted to be within the fitness industry. I wanted to be a personal trainer. And then after I got my degree, straight away I got a job doing personal training as a freelance, but it definitely wasn't kind of what I expected it to be, there was definitely moments where I felt like, okay, this is not what I want to do. These are not the people that I thought I would be coaching. Because you have this image in your head, I'm going to be this elite coach. You see Phil Learning, you're like, I'm going to coach people like he does. Obviously, you're looking at his chapter 55 and you're on chapter 1. So you're going to have to go clean the gym floor for a bit, before you can do that kind of stuff and gain that experience. So that's kind of where I was at. And it was obviously a lot of the gym floor stuff. A lot of it's sales. As much as, you need to know the knowledge and you need to get results, a lot of it was sales, and nothing that I did previously was prepared me for that. And it was only until I got the job in Singapore, that's when I was actually able to flourish as a trainer, to improve, because they would give you clients and you don't need to worry about the finding client side of things. They were given to you, and you could just focus on the things that you ultimately wanted to do in the beginning, was to help people to learn, and to exercise your skills, right, of helping people and nutrition and training. So yeah, that was definitely, I did that. and that was definitely something that allowed me to really flourish, I guess, as a trainer, to kind of where I am today. And then during that time in Singapore, I didn't really compete as much as I would have liked. I used to, prior to that, I was competing every year at the British. I went to Worlds, um, and I think I just kind of, because I won everything along the way. I never really took value in what I was doing. It was just, okay, another gold medal, another record, and you just kind of tick them off. And then once you kind of achieve everything, you're a bit like you're lost, right? And you're like, what am I actually doing here? Do I really want to compete? Is it really something that I enjoy? And I was a bit lost for a little bit when I finished. I say finished. I could always go back now, but I decided like this isn't really something that I look forward to more. It doesn't get me out of bed in the morning, and I was a bit lost with my training. I didn't have a goal. So this is one for everyone that says, as a trainer, you're always motivated, or motivation, this willpower. But I think motivation just comes with clarity, with goal. If you have a clear goal, you have a clear destination that you want to go to, then you'll be motivated for it. If you're struggling with motivation, it's likely that you just don't have a clear path or somewhere that you really want to get to. And that was definitely the case for me afterwards. I had no idea what I wanted to do. How do I train if I'm not training for powerlifting? Or what do I do with my lifting if I'm not pushing towards, hitting a record? Why do I need to train so hard? There's a void, right, that you're missing. And I guess that's kind of what then threw me into the physique side of things, because I needed a new goal. And I'd never really got in shape for a photo shoot or a contest prep. It was always, let's just drop weight for a contest. Let's get under a weight category. I was good with weight cuts, but definitely not the physique side of things. And because of the clients that we were training, you're trying to get transformations, you're trying to get fat loss. I thought this is a great time to learn that and hone in on that and practice that. So that's when I went into the photo shoot realm, and I was like, okay, let me apply myself to see if I can get in shape for a photo shoot. I did that, and it was, okay, what next? So you're always looking for that next goal. And then I was at a show, and it was, I think it was Muscle Mania, and I was looking on stage thinking, I could beat these guys, kind of thing. Obviously, the ego side of you is like, yeah, I can beat these guys. You're looking in the mirror thinking, yeah, I can beat these guys. When really, no, you didn't. You probably couldn't. And that was my entrance into competing. And since then, I haven't really looked back. Now, I think that was about 2017, 2018. Yeah.
It's interesting. I want to just go back to that point of where you mentioned about when you don't have motivation and it's the clarity of goals. We often see that in Gen Pop stuff. What do you think a Gen Pop middle 30s lost female, let's call them lost because they try yo-yo diet, they diet and then they gain it back and then they kind of go to the gym, but then they don't go to the gym, but then they're unhappy about the way that they look and they go around in this perpetual cycle. What do you think they're missing out on? But that's it. What do you think they're missing out on to get to the point where they have something to really desire?
I think a lot of the time it's, in all honesty, it's happiness, right? I think we spoke about that as well. It's whether or not you really do want that goal. Um, I think a lot of times we will think, okay, yeah, it's nice to look that great, or to drop a hell of a lot of body fat, to be in shape, best shape of your life, have abs, you name it. But is that really something that you want, or are you using that to search for something else? Are you missing happiness in other places in your life, that you're using something external to change something that's actually internal. So I think this happens a lot in terms of competitors as well. So, everyone wants to win, right? And you try to you're like, okay, I win the novice competition, and then you're like, okay, I'll win the novice overall. Then you win the open, then you win the open overall, and you keep pushing forward, searching for this happiness, this gold medal or whatever. But you still are upset about your own progress, and you're still like, there needs to be more, because you don't really stop to kind of, I guess, smell the roses along the way. Um, and this is the same for, I guess, Gen Pop, right? In this situation, like, you kind of get really upset with, I guess, how far that you kind of still need to go in the beginning. So you might train for like 3 weeks, and then you're like, oh, I'm still not really there yet. But you forget about really how far you've actually come. So, you know, and this is not to say that, you should settle and be happy with kind of where you're currently at, but you still need to kind of find happiness from other places. You still need to, you know, be happy with that progress that you've made. You're walking along this path and you're not looking at the scenery, you're not smelling the roses. You just, okay, I'm gung ho to get to this end place. And I think it's really, really important to enjoy the process, and take pride in that, because that's when people get to the end and they realize, actually, I maybe you get through the whole journey. Maybe you're like, okay, tunnel vision, I get all the way to the end. But then when you get there, you're like, it's not really what I kind of wanted. And then that's why a lot sometimes people rebound, because it's not filling the gap or the void that they thought it once was.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd probably argue and say that a lot of the people that go through this mindset, there's a small minutia that get to that quote unquote end. And there's actually a lot of people that just get halfway in. And it's normally like, we know that the trigger that you will have to like get a coach or start a fat loss phase comes because it's triggered by something that is definitely external. Like, it's like someone says, oh, you put a bit of weight on there, or you look at a picture of yourself and you feel embarrassed, ashamed, guilt, whatever it is, and then you put on the jeans that you can't fit to go out for a dinner or whatever like that, and you then want to do something about it. But if you take it a step lower, so you go deeper into that, you don't just go, I want to change my body. You go, I want to feel a different way when I look at myself. I want to feel a different thing. And sometimes when it's other people that are maybe, especially with, let's say, with the Asian culture, because that's where we specialize, or most of our efforts, is that it's normally a comment from someone else. It's normally a dinner, a social event, a wedding, that someone goes, oh, you gained weight. And they're putting that on you because they think that they're just being helpful or truthful or honest. And you go, yeah, I am going to change that. But before that day, you didn't actually want to change. You may have been like, I'm happy, or you may have been like, I'm actually okay, or it's not really that important to me right now, which is okay. It's absolutely fine not to be like that. But then when you have that trigger and you start a diet because of those factors, you get halfway in and it's hard, but then you remember that you actually started because of someone else's comments rather than what you wanted to do. So you lose that first 3 to 4 kilos out of guilt, enthusiasm, honeymoon period of starting something new. You like it, but then when it's hard, you then move away from the process because the process is something that you actually didn't want to do. And almost our jobs, specifically with Gen Pops and people that are doing things for the wrong reasons, and it's not a wrong reason, sorry, it's a unproductive reason, which won't last the course of the journey. Your job as a coach is to actually find the real reason why they're doing it, make them see that they're doing it for that reason. And then if they actually then say, yeah, but actually, okay, cool, that was the first trigger, but I do want to change and this is something I want to do for a long term, and it becomes about them internally, the confidence that they're going to get, the motivation to feel better or to feel more of value for themselves and importance. It's something for themselves to go to the gym, or it's important like their headspace then when they go for a walk. Then you can then start thinking about how successful you can be. Because before that, you're not going to be successful if you're doing it for something else, someone else, and you're going into a diet which is effectively, as you mentioned, controlled starvation for the most part, which is going to create suffering and unhappiness to some degree because being hungry sucks, and to be low energy is less optimal for your human condition, then when you get there, you're like, well, fuck this, I don't want to feel like this. And only if you have true motivation within inside, or you truly want to do it for yourself, do you get to a point where that suffering is worth it. And that's the trade-off, right? Is the suffering worth it? Your goal will determine that. How much it is internally will determine that.
Yeah, and it's definitely, you got those, the ones that do like kind of don't really make it. It's maybe they realize where their true happiness lies, like midway through the process, and they're like, actually, I don't really want to get that lean. So, I'm happy with kind of where I'm at, and they accept that, right? And then they go into the next kind of phase of whatever they need to do. But then there's other ones that they don't really see it, right? They get right to the end, they finish that whole that journey, right? Tunnel vision, no roses. I don't want to spell it, I got hay fever, you know. And they get to the end, and they then discovered that they actually, I'm still really unhappy, this doesn't fill the void. And then they rebound, but then they still haven't realized that that's the thing that doesn't fulfill them, and they keep trying to, maybe if I did it again, I would be more happy.
Maybe
And then
we
that
fall in love
becomes a
with that.
yo-yo.
Yeah, they fall in love with that diet culture, which is really common too. It's like, I'll be
Yeah.
happy if, or I'll be happy when. And it's like, I'll be happy when or if I'm at 60 kilos. But 61, no, I'm unhappy and I hate it. And I had this week, someone that said she wants to be 50 kilos for her wedding. It's in July. Her previous dieting history would allude to that is not fucking possible in the time period that we are, because she's 58 right now, and she'd have to give up God's earth and heaven to get to 50. It's not impossible, and I always will make a point of that. If you want it badly enough, you can always get it. You can always do it. But for her, who's had a poor dieting history, always led her down this road, that isn't right for her right now for that specific goal. And that will always be, it's always like you have to realize that whether you're 51 or 50, or you're 52 or 50, whether you're 53 or 50, does it really fucking matter? Like, does it really matter? Like, 1 kilo, you will have slightly a little bit more love handles. Maybe you might not even. But what does that change for your happiness? What does that change for your confidence? What does that change for your relationship with others? I would argue if that 1 kilo changed everything about you, you've got nothing else in your life. And unfortunately, that's like, you've got nothing else to live for. If 1 kilo of your body weight changes your perception on life, you've got a really, really poor relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Deep.
Deep. Now bringing it back. So we're now at a timeline that lifting some weights. We've got really strong. You now stepped on stage with your budgies on,
Yeah.
and now you're like, you like this process. Where are you now?
So yeah, powerlifting, completed it. Bodybuilding, I guess the process that I'm at now, it's damn, he's coughing up a storm there. COVID. But yeah, the process I'm in and now is, it's this, I'm definitely enjoying the process more with bodybuilding. Whereas with powerlifting, because initially I got that initial um the gold medal, that the likes on the Instagram, whatever, from that, right? You get that happiness, you get this I've got this gold medal, wow, this is cool, people like your shit. And then you get more of that, right, every time you win. But then you lose track of, actually, why am I actually doing this? I started enjoying, like, because I enjoyed it. And because with bodybuilding I never got that, right? I sucked at it. And I wasn't competitive, and it was that made me enjoy the process more. Like, obviously, yes, I want to get towards this goal, but along that route, I've learned to enjoy that process again more. It's like, okay, why did I start training? It's because I wanted to push myself hard, because I wanted to learn things. And I guess that's what's changed my why, I guess, in terms of why I began in the first place, right? Was to look better in clothes, to be more confident. But now it's kind of flipped to um, it's a learning process. It's there to help to challenge myself to do something that a little bit further, to experience, the eating disorders, to experience um, the nutrition side of things, the training side of things that can cross over and help, clients. Of course, none of them, um, well, not many of them are going to want to compete, but you have to go through that process to learn how it feels. And for us to get down, like for me to get down into contest state, I think is potentially going to be a very similar feeling to someone who's overweight and they're just trying to get in shape. I think those feelings will potentially be the same. The hardships will is relative to that individual, right? And that's something that you have to experience in order to provide the empathy, in order to strategize to help other people. And I guess it's one of those things like you can share that, um say, the love or the struggles with someone else, which is really important, right? It's like pregnancy, right? Women who've been through pregnancy, they get along with other mums much better because of the experience, the help, and the shared stories, right? And I guess it's the same with this process. Is a lot of the time not many people have gone through a fat loss phase, right? So if you're someone who's never been through a fat loss phase and you want to get in shape, you may not be have any friends that have done it, right? So you have no one to speak to, and then you don't feel that support, you don't feel that culture, and yeah, you don't have people that you can lean on. But your coach, I guess, is that person that understands you, right? Someone that you potentially speak to a lot, and any questions, any things that you really find difficult, chances are that person's been through it many, many times, and they understand all the things. So that's why when people try to hide away that the non-adherence issues, and whatnot, it's like there's nothing bad with that. We're never there to shame you, or at least I think a good coach shouldn't. But it's about sharing that and finding that trust and being able to say, hey, look, this stuff happens, man. It really does. And you'll be surprised at how many bodybuilders go through the same process. You think, okay, hardcore. Even myself, I've been through processes where I've not adhered to the diet. I've cheated. I've driven to Five Guys to eat during a contest prep, and these are things that people don't really speak about. They only show you what's seen on social media. Like, I'm this guy that's shredded, won this competition. He must have no adherence issues. But this is definitely not the case. There are struggles. People struggle with things. And you're not more or less hardcore if you struggle. It's just having that understanding and sharing that process.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a really good reason to be able to go back and do more and more and more. I think that probably shows you the journey of, like, it's like abundance as opposed to scarcity. Like maybe at the beginning, the scarcity was that you were trying to fit into that Mackenzie top that's a little bit too big. And then now you're like, okay, well, now I'm doing this A for myself, but I'm also doing it for everyone else that's around. Because if I can go through something, then my clients or people around me can actually benefit from that too. And you often see that ability in those that have kind of got rid of their own understanding of if I'm happy when, or I'll get to when, and they've shifted actually from like a body weight target of how they'll be happy to now just being like, if I or when I stay or journey when I have this journey that I practice that I get better at over time, that's like the kind of fundamental shifts. They go from not wanting to practice and fail to actually going, well, actually these failures are really, really valuable, and these failures are what's going to bring me closer to myself, but also bring me closer to my clients. That's bring me closer to the people I'm around. And then when you embrace that, when you move to that state of mind, I don't know if there is a situation or there is a potential movement away from that being productive. That's amazing. It's positivity, and it's all like, it's helpful in nature, which is always about that abundance lifestyle where you're like, I've got enough for myself, so let's help other people too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing is when you get into that predicament and you're like, I'm struggling, and you're like, how do I get past this now? That's the hardest part. But that's also the most enjoyable part of the process. I think during you probably like, I can't wait for this to be over. Let me get through this. But then afterwards, when you've accomplished it, you're like, I nailed it, nailed it. Yeah,
GG, good game, good
yeah,
game.
that's it.
No. And then like, so we are probably close to nowadays from the like the continuum of time frame. What is after this prep, and what is the learnings that you've took from maybe past failures that you're going to need to know that you need to do come end of this prep for maybe long term right wrongs of last reverse diets? What is it that you're going to take away from this one?
Yeah, I think definitely for me a big change in mindset when it comes to competing. Um, I think I made a lot of improvements in 2019 when I did that contest prep, and I was like, I can win this kind of thing, and I pushed very very hard for that gold medal or that plastic trophy, and kind of lost track of everything. And then at the end of your competing, you come second or whatever. You're like, nah, fuck this, fuck these judges. They don't know what they're talking about. They made the wrong mistake. That ego side of thing comes back, right? Because you want to win, and it's subjective, right? But then scaling it back, and I have to give a lot of credit for my coach Jeff Alberts for this, because he's helped me out a lot in terms of this. Is understanding the longevity of what you're doing. Uh, you're doing this thing for yourself, for the enjoyment of it, for the process to learn. Not there can only be one winner, and if everyone was like that, um, you're going to struggle, right? If everyone gets upset if they didn't win, you have to understand that of course, winning is great, but I think flipping it and making this process enjoyable. Like, I'm here to, I'll say, take part, but you're here to, challenge yourself, and the journey is only about you and how you go about it. What did you do last time? How can I improve upon that? Because your happiness, your success comes from overcoming your own self, not this validation from, couple of guys that probably never don't know you, don't know your context, don't know what things that you struggle through. Because throughout a journey, like, yeah, you look at the end result and you're like, okay, that guy's fat on stage, or that guy is shredded on stage. That's all you see, right? But it's like, well, that guy, he had COVID, he went through this, he didn't have this, he had no money, whatever, right? But he still got on stage, and so everyone has a different context when it comes to stepping on stage, or getting into the shape of their life and what they can handle. So yeah, I think embracing that side of things, embracing just enjoying the prep a little bit more, and like getting through every day. Yes, there's certain things which will get hard, calories get lower, but being like, okay, cool. Let me embrace it. Let me see if I can still be, a good person during that process. Because a lot of the times, I think 2019, I could easily say, I was a dick, man, and it was still better than my first prep. Like my first prep, I was even more of a dick. But understanding that, yeah, it's a choice, and calling yourself out for those things, when, it's easy to, snap and, have a high temper when you're hungry and you're hangry, right? But know that that's a choice that you made. Like, no one's telling you to compete. No one's putting a gun to your head to say you got a diet. If you want to eat that food, go ahead, eat it. But, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? And, that how you behave around people has nothing to do with, how tired you are, etc. That was always a choice that you made yourself. Because that person probably has nothing to do with you, right? You're just going about their day, and maybe, yeah, you're just short tempered on that day, and that's why I think, when other people get angry at you as well, I try not to react in that same way, because you never know how that person's what they've been through at that exact moment in time, right? um yeah,
That,
I
that,
guess that's a
that,
big learning.
that,
Yeah,
um, even if you react to other people or you lash out at others, even when you're in that state, it's not a representation of them. It's just you reflecting on you and where you're like temperament is, your control, your ability to see past that tiredness or see past the specific feelings at that moment in time. And it's one of those areas of like every single time you diet past the comfort zone level, you end up falling back into that little trap,
Of course.
like the woe
Yeah.
is me type of thing. You don't know it's the woe is you because at the moment in time you're just trying to survive, right? That's how you feel. You're trying to survive,
Yeah.
get through it. But over time, let's say for example, you're 80 kilos. When you get in the 70s, it'll be a bit, for the first time, it'll be a bit as woe as me. But then if you diet again a year later and you get down to 65, that bit between 65 and 60 will be the bit as woe as me because you've managed the 70 bit. So you're like between 70 and 65, like, okay, yeah, it's the same stuff. I'm going to react better. I'm going to hold my tongue a little bit more. And then you do that whole process and you're like, oh, well, why was I a dick last time? Like, oh, just because you were trying to survive. But every single time you do it, you become a better human at that depth of sacrifice, discipline, and pain threshold.
Yeah.
So
You just
all
know what to expect, right?
yeah,
So you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. That's why I'm slightly worried still, because obviously I haven't got below 75, but I think where I need to be is I need to get to around that 73, 75 kilos, like and below, and hold it there for a while. And that's going to be my contest stage shape. That was hard to say. And yeah, it's unknown territory, right? In that phase, you're going to be more tired, you're going to be more moody, and I think what I didn't do prior was to share that with people, which is definitely different this time around. I'll tell my missus, hey, I got just take my calories down. I'm gonna be tired. I'm gonna be hungry. So if I'm a knob, like call me out, kind of thing. And if you've given the green light and people understand that's happening, I think communication is just so key, right?
yeah,
In those situations,
yeah,
because a lot of times people do break up with their girlfriends and whatnot during the preps, right? Because they get so engrossed in what they're doing and they don't realize how much of a dick that they become. Um, so yeah, it is a learning process, and I think no one's ever going to be perfect within a diet. I think I'm lucky that my missus is still with me, I guess, after 3 preps and all the powerlifting.
it's a good test of the ring of fire, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, right?
I always said in the past, I've been like, if you can do like a year with a girl, and like you can diet at the same time as doing like over a year with someone, and they don't break up with you, then they're probably for you. Like
Yeah,
if you can both diet and you can both get in serious shape and not break up with each other, then they're really impressive too.
yeah,
I think
that's impressive.
that's like the ultimate test of a relationship really is when the cards are down, the chips are down, you're all feeling arse. Can you be arse spending time with the other person? And it's like yes or no. And when your energy is the lowest and you still have a desire to see the other person, then you know that there is something like special there.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't be arsed. She's like, maybe this isn't for us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm lucky in that way. She's very supportive.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a good relationship advice. Go and do a diet, and if you still want to see her after you've got like veins in your abs, then she's the one.
Yeah.
That's always a good one. Anyway, we're going to stop that here. But it's been a very, very good chat, brother. I look forward to having you on again as always because you're going to be around for a while. So, apart from that, mate, thank you very much for coming on, and chat to you soon.
Thank you.